Well, here we are again, talking about periods. This year I turned 30, and that means I have had my period for officially 15 years, exactly half of my life. And over the years, I have learned a lot about my period, and a lot of things have changed as well. My body is changing, the world is changing, culture is changing, and I am changing along with that. I also want to say thank you to Rael for sponsoring this video. I am really excited about the period products that they're making, and I'm going to be sharing them with you later in the video. Spoiler alert, it's not just pads and tampons. The first thing that I've learned is that there is a stigma around periods. I used to think that my period was dirty. I thought it was gross. I thought it was something that I had to hide, maybe talk about a little bit with some friends, but for the most part, keep it to myself and never let it be known that it's happening. Now I have learned that my period is not dirty, and there are lots of historical reasons why we think periods are dirty, but essentially I've come to accept that having a period is normal and natural. And there is a big difference between a period being messy and a period being dirty. Messy is something that is an inconvenience and can happen with your period, and in a lot of ways can just be out of your control sometimes, and it's okay for things to be messy. But dirty points at something that is immoral and wrong, and there's nothing wrong with having a period. Having a period is a natural function of the human body for so many people, and it allows the body to do so many things. And so yes, a period can be messy, and that's okay, but it is not dirty. The next thing I've learned is that I can treat my period holistically. I used to focus solely on just managing my period flow. I really didn't think about anything other than how am I going to contain my period blood and just keep it in a pad or whatever it was that I was using. Now I think about managing my period in a holistic way. So I think about my mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Instead of just throwing on a pad and being like, well, that's all I can do for myself, just gonna be over here not feeling so great, I've realized that there are actually a lot of things that I can do and that there are so many options for me. A brand that I have really been loving recently is Rael, and they are a period brand that thinks about periods holistically, whether it's cramps or acne that you may be experiencing, or products to actually manage your period, from tampons to pads, liners, etc. At this point, I normally know when my period is coming, and it normally comes with breakouts. And something that I've really loved, the Rael acne healing patches. So these are hydrocolloid patches. They're so invisible looking, you can't even really see them. The patches come in different sizes, and you just put it on the pimple that you have, and I typically wear them overnight, and when I wake up in the morning, the pimple is diminished, it's not red. It's just a really easy way to help bring a breakout down in a really gentle way. As I've gotten older, my periods are also more physically painful, so I experience a lot more cramping than I used to. And Rael also makes heating patches that you can wear wherever you go. So typically in the past I have used a heating pad, but that means I'm like locked into a certain place and I can't move anywhere because the heating pad is plugged in. But this allows me to still go out, live my life, and I can have a heating patch on me, and it lasts for about 6 hours, which is really great because that's almost an entire day, and if I need to change it, it's really easy to change too. Then there are other times where I just want to lay around and be a vegetable on the couch, and that's just what I need to do. So Rael also makes face masks, and this one is a hydration mask. I have really liked using this one. It's a sheet mask, put it on my face, live my best vegetable life. I love that life. Other times I've realized, you know, the vegetable life is not actually what I need today. I need to move in order for my body to feel better. Right now, something that has been quite challenging for me is dealing with the mental and emotional changes that have happened with my period. So I have noticed that I have much higher peaks and lower valleys, especially in the 2 weeks approaching my period. And I can just get into these really dark internal spirals. And what has been so helpful for me is to be able to be honest about these experiences and to talk about what I'm going through with my therapist or friends that I'm close to, my girlfriend, and to be able to be fully honest about this, because there is a level of shame for me. I feel like other people aren't going to believe me. They're going to think I'm making it up. They're going to think I'm using it as an excuse for bad behavior or just being mean or cranky or whatever it is I am that day. And, you know, I've had to come to terms with this is real and I need to talk to other people about it and also get as much information as I can about it so I can figure out how to keep moving forward. The next thing that I have learned is I get to decide how I want to manage my period. And this seems really simple, but I used to think that I had to use the things that other people were using, aka tampons. I remember growing up and pretty much everyone I knew was using tampons, or at least they were saying they were using tampons, and everyone was very disgusted at the thought of using pads. There have been so many times where people have said, oh, pads are disgusting, they're so gross, why would anyone ever want to wear them? To me, not knowing that I wear pads a lot of the time when I have my period. Now I have realized that there is no wrong way for me to manage my period. I get to decide what feels good for my body in that moment and with that period. And it feels really good to just sink into the fact that I like pads, you know? I just want to wear pads. That's it. I just want a little pillow on my vulva. That's what feels good for me. My favorite pillows right now are the Ryel organic cotton pads. This is the pack that I used during my most recent period, and I have to say these are the softest pads I have ever used, because when I put them on, they immediately did feel like a little pillow. They were so soft and so comfortable to wear. I love how absorbent these pads are, especially because they're not super thick, and I loved that. I loved it. It was so good. It was so soft. The Ryel pads are definitely my favorite organic cotton pads that I have ever tried. They're non-toxic, chlorine-free, there's no fragrance in them, nothing that's going to irritate you. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was so comfortable for me to wear throughout the day, because I have noticed with some other pads, like I can get a little itchy or it might feel a little irritating towards the middle or the end of the day, and that just didn't happen with these pads at all. Another thing that I also really loved is that the pads come in different sizes. So this is the regular size, there's also a petite size, an overnight size, a long liner. There's so many different options. I really love that because people have different bodies, people have different preferences, people have different period flows, and this really helps to include a lot more people. If you're interested in checking out Ryel, I will have a link down below for you guys, and I definitely recommend looking into it because I have never seen a brand focus so holistically on periods before, and I think it's really cool. The next thing that I've learned is that periods are not just about women. I used to think that periods were only about girls and women, and that was it. Nothing else to think about. Now I've realized that women aren't the only ones that have periods, and that the period world needs to have more gender inclusion, because we have been brought up in a culture that only sees it as something for women. And when we talk about periods a lot, we often focus only on women, but any gender can have a period. In addition to being more inclusive to gender when we talk about periods, we also need to stop shielding cis boys and men from the conversation. When boys are kept away from learning about periods and asking questions and talking about them openly, when they grow up into men, they treat the women in their lives differently because of that, and they will grow up to think that periods are gross and that it's something for their girlfriend or partner or wife or sister or whoever to deal with on their own. And I don't want to hear anything about your period. I don't want to hear anything about what's going on. That is what continues to fuel the stigma in a really huge way. So when I feel physically safe to do so, I try to be open and honest about these conversations. And you know, there are times where you're in public and you might be talking about periods, and I don't try to silence myself or make myself smaller when I'm talking about periods, whether there's a man in the conversation or just around who might be hearing it. And I do think that it is important to have these conversations with different people and to not shield people from them. The last thing that I've learned is that periods don't stay the same, at least not for me. I used to have a period that was pretty inconsequential, like nothing was really happening except maybe a heavy flow. Maybe it was like slightly uncomfortable, a little bit of a headache. And now it's like I experience everything, whether it's extremely bad cramps, gripping headaches that will last for days, a really heavy flow. Like I was talking about earlier, the mental and emotional part has become much more of a factor. And I've realized, oh my gosh, my period is completely different from the way that it was 10 years ago. And I think the more that I sink into this, the more that I learn, the more that I will figure out what works for me in the future. Because I'll bet you anything, when I'm 40, my period's gonna be real different from how it is now. That is it for my period video today. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions for me, please leave them down below in the comments. Also, please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so you can be notified when I post new videos. I will see you next Friday right here at 2 p.m. Bye.